Conversation with Billy. Questions Mariann. Answers given by Billy. The central consciousness.
What is the central consciousness?
The creational-spiritual-energetic central consciousness that is on the one hand from the central core of creation itself, from where everything emanates, from / comes out of / emerges in the whole creation. One can imagine and visualize this as a core which is distributed and spread in the whole creation, which is not simply a special point, but it is altogether in every universe. It is altogether universal through all 7 universes of the creation. That is the one thing. Then you have the central consciousness of the human being himself or herself, where he or she centralizes everything in his or her consciousness and then processes it accordingly and also stores it. That is the main thing. Then you have a central consciousness which actually records and stores the things of the life forms on every world where any life forms live, where also everything is centrally stored in all swinging waves, with a human being who has a conscious thinking or the impulse-based thinking of life forms that cannot think in this framework as the human being can. Rather, everything simply runs in an impulse-based wise.
Around the planet.
Yes, around the planet. And all that also goes into the creational central consciousness. Everything. Nothing is ever lost in the entire universe. Every impulse that is created, every word is but an impulse, every thought is an impulse, everything is stored in the central consciousness of the creation. And the central consciousness point is pancreationally present in all universes. It is distributed. It is not a single point. Even if we say central consciousness, it is not a single point, but it is distributed in total throughout the creation, throughout all universes, throughout the creation energy. Quite simply, one can say that the central consciousness is also the total creation energy, because all and everything is stored in it. Nothing is lost, not an iota, but it remains there for all times as long as the creation exists. And then when the creation one day falls into contraction again after 1049 new formings which it goes through, it is carried further from one universe, from one creation to another. Nothing is ever lost. And then when the 1049th series is finished from the creations it passes through, that is from the lowest to the highest form. Then when it passes away it goes into the absolutus absolutum. And from there back over the other 6 levels again, or up, you can say as you like, into the being absolutum. And there altogether everything is stored which was taken in by the central consciousness of the creation. From every creational form across 1049 levels.
Then what is the central absolutum?
This is exactly the same as with the creation. The absolute's absolutum also has a center just like any other high form. And the center is simply where everything is stored. For example, if you take a library, then you have the smallest library at home, the next library has the community, the next library has the city, the next library is the canton, the next library is with the federal government. At every higher place is a central consciousness. A central repository, a central memory, as you always want to say. And that transfers from one to the other and becomes more and more. It accumulates because more and more is added to it. And that is from the lowest level comes a lot that goes to the next level. The next level also creates and adds to what has already been created, and the next one does exactly the same thing.
Is the material and the energetical of creation the same thing?
No, that's the energetical that we just talked about. In the material realm one has exactly the same thing, only the human being perceives it just as little as the creational energetic. With the material one sees it simply by the fact that development is always progressing. This is stored by means of written records, annals, history books, and so on and so forth.
But that's also in the creation energy, isn't it?
Yes, of course, that also goes into the creation energy, because material consists of creation energy. And that is also transferred there, and that which is just purely material, you can trace from time immemorial how that has taken place, how everything has stored itself, has continued, out of which again this has been made, expanded, something new was made, expanded again. It is exactly the same as with the creation energy. Only with the material you can determine that. You have tapes, you have a writing system with which you can write it down and record it, you have a way of speaking where you can pass it on by word of mouth verbally, and so on and so on. You have photographs, you have film, you have electronic records. That's how it goes in the material. And with the creation it is just the pure creation energy that stores everything centrally, stores and collects it in this kind and wise also further from creation to creation, and so the evolution goes on.
Then what I have written is right in itself.
Yes, so far that's right, you just have to lay it out / expound on it more and more.
Because of the future.
All and everything is stored, everything that is thought, what is talked about, what is written down, all and everything is energy. Every movement of the hand, every movement of the finger is energy. And the energy is needed because creation has to evolve / develop further. And everything that happens throughout the universe, on any planets, celestial bodies, suns, that develops energy in the form of impulses. And the creation is dependent on it to be able to develop itself further, and consequently it needs every iota of all and everything that goes from the creation realm in the universe or in all 7 universes to be able to develop itself further.
What does this have to do with the fact that the future is already here?
Yes, that cumulates through what is done today. That has an effect on what will happen tomorrow. These are pure bare energies, impulse energies, which run into the future in such a way and thus create the future. Consequently, what happens today has already happened tomorrow, or has already arisen as a result tomorrow, if you simply live from today into tomorrow. Thus, what is done today determines what will be tomorrow in the creation. Just as with you as a human being, what you do today carries itself into the morning, into the day tomorrow, into the future, a year ahead or 10 years. Everything has an effect, and that determines what will result in the future.
Actually, the future is already here.
Yes, the future is already here.
Is that because of the speed?
Yes, of course, that goes at 107,000 times the speed it runs into the future. Consequently, what is happening today is already present tomorrow. And so it goes on endlessly.
That's what I was thinking, but I didn't think about the medium of creation energy anymore.
If you have a light generator, then you can control it through your thinking. That is, through your thinking you need your hands, your fingers, and you lever around the switches, and depending on what you then do, the light becomes stronger and stronger. Depending on how much fuse, current, electricity you give to the light element, the more it starts to shine. And when you are at the lowest point of light that you generate through this generator, you have a small circle that is illuminated. The more you open the switch of energy, the further the circle goes and the more it lights up the environment or whatever it is. The more energy you give to the light element via the generator that you turn up, control and steer yourself, the stronger the light becomes, and eventually it shines, I don't know how far. Then you can illuminate things much more, not only in the nearest surroundings, but further and further and further from this light element, like for example with a good spotlight which shines I don't know how far, and you can still recognize things far away. That is then the future. Then you see practically into the future. What is going on back there?
So I could, if it were technically possible for me, visit my successor personality.
Yes, of course, you would just have to master time travel. And then you can visit yourself in the past and also in the future. Only it is a little bit different than our scientists imagine, who think that exactly the same time runs there as here in the present. But this is not the case, because if you go into the past, this time has already elapsed, and if you go there and stay there for 1 year and come back again at the same time, actually you go only one moment away from the starting point until you come back again, even if you are in the past for 1 year. And in the future it is exactly the same. This is a misconception of the scientists who deal with it. Because if you live 1 or 2 or even more years in the past, you live in the time that has already passed, and that is not the same time as the present time.
Thinking.
Thinking a thought about it.
Thinking is not just anything that the human being lets something go through his or her consciousness. So thinking is not non-thinking, but it is active thinking, and that is a thing that he or she is processing in his or her consciousness, also dissecting. That is, when the human being really thinks, then it is not just a world thought that runs off like on a treadmill, but the thought he or she has to take it apart, plow through it, dissect it, analyze it. And only this corresponds to what is called thinking. And if the human being does not do that, then the thoughts just run empty into the distance without him or her logically following them, namely because he or she does not know what he or she leads around in his or her thoughts. Then he or she does not think either, but simply superficially leads this and that on superficial flowing thought scraps. Then there is also no result which is right, and if the human being does this in this kind and wise, then it is called stupid or dull. It is not really not thought, because a real thinking dissects the thoughts which go through the consciousness. Everything is analyzed, and therefore it is said, because everything is a dull or a damp, that the thinking is stupid, as dull or damp, therefore dumb.
Put a fog on it. What is actually stupid or stupidity?
Stupid, being stupid or stupidity, is actually nothing other than what the human being calls dull thinking, namely the dull thinking, that is the non-thinking, the sluggish thinking, as well as the limp, flat, tired, sluggish, lethargic, listless, lazy, and clumsy, as well as the clumsy, awkward, slow, powerless, circumstantial, earth-heavy, stoic, and phlegmatic thinking, as it may still be called under other terms. A human being who thinks in one of these wises, such a one is called stupid, which psychologists do not know how to explain, because they truthfully do not know what stupidity really is, namely that this term denotes nothing other than the kind of thinking which the human being uses. Purely psychologically explained, at least this is claimed, stupidity is a lack of intelligence from which results, for example, a foolish act. However, this does not correspond to the truth, but on the contrary to an erroneous explanation, because psychology starts from completely wrong premises and has no real idea, let alone a truthful knowledge of the human intelligentum. In its unknowledge with regard to the intelligentum, and obviously psychology does not know that intelligence is something completely different from the intelligentum by which the human being controls his or her actions and activity, it assesses many things absolutely wrongly, and thereby treats and misleads/misteaches the human being completely contrary to the real truth.
Translation: Bruce Lawler, United States of America.